Reflections, the life stories of the people of Westerly told in their own words. Nancy Schilke grew up in Dunn's Corners, listening to the incredible stories of how her father, Henry Morris, risked his life in the dramatic rescue of 5 people during the Great Hurricane of '38. This is her story.
Good morning, Tom Galusho here, President of Westerly Historical Society, with our ongoing episode of Reflections, an oral history project sponsored by the Westerly Historical Society. And this morning I have the sincere pleasure of introducing Nancy Schilke. Good morning, Nancy.
Hi, Tom.
Nice to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So you understand the program that we have with our oral history, and we're trying to capture the lives of interesting people in our community. And you were selected to join me today. So tell me, how did Nancy Schilke come to be?
First, I'll go to my great-grandparents first. My grandfather, Morris, and my grandmother, Morris, Carrie Morris, had 3 sons, and my dad was the oldest. And then on my mother's side, my mother had her dad and mom. First, my grandfather, Kenyon, was born in Hopkinton, Rhode Island, and then his birth mother, passed away, and he and his dad moved to Glasgow, where he met my grandmother, eventually grew up there, and then my parents married and had 2 daughters, and they were 6 and 8 years old when I was born, and I was a surprise. And so from there, we lived down in Weekapaug. At the corner of Weekapaug and Cove Road, my dad was a builder and built a house there.
Okay.
And that's
nice
how
spot.
We started. Yep. And at age 2.5 months, with the war going on, my dad was very patriotic, and he did not want anyone to think. I believe the draft, if you had 2 children, you would be called. But if you had 3, you were able to stay home. And my father enlisted in the Navy because he didn't want anyone to think that he was trying to avoid the draft. Wow. And so he left approximately when I was between 2.5 and 3 months old for quite a while.
Wow.
Until I was about 2.5, and he got home again.
Well, so he saw wartime service.
He was actually in Puerto Rico, stationed in Puerto Rico, but he was there for the duration of the war. And when he finally returned home, there's a funny story about my dad. He had told my mom that he would be home in approximately a week. And a knock came at the door at night, and my mother was alone down at the beach and always put a bureau in front of the door, protecting her 3 girls. And my dad knocked, and she said, "Who is it?" And he said, "Henry." And my mother said, "Henry who?" And my dad said, "Henry, who the hell did you think?" And so that was even at his funeral, because my mother was very protective of us, and that's how that happened.
Well, it must have been a frightening time for her to feel that way.
It was. They had to, have the blackout every night because they're along the shore, and, it was frightening for her.
Sure. So your father came back and resumed his career as a carpenter in the area?
As a carpenter, yes, he did. And he started building a few houses. And then he also, to supplement their income for the weekends in the summer, he took a Red Cross life-saving course. And then he was able to be a lifeguard, and that's how he became a strong swimmer.
Okay, and that had some benefits.
That had huge benefits
Sure.
for 5 people that my father saved during the 1938 hurricane.
Sure, I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, what I know, because honestly, Tom, my dad never sat down and talked to the 3 of us, the 3 girls. My mother is the one who was so proud of him. My mother was Callista Kenyon Mars. My dad and my Uncle Bill, who was 19 at the time, my dad was 27, they were going around during this storm to see who they could help, what windows they could board up, and then eventually came to the Weekapaug Inn, and there were other policemen there and so forth, and they saw a flickering light in the inn, and they realized there was shouting from the inn, and then my father offered to swim. And I think it was Patrolman Kingsley who said, "Can't be done." And my dad said, "I know I can do it." And so they threw a mattress in the water, and that, to see if that would float, and it immediately swirled under the water. And so they said no to my dad again. And then he said, "I'm going to do it." And they found a rope that would go across the channel that had been made by the hurricane. And he swam, and with one arm he was stroking the water, and the other he had the rope that was around my dad also went around the person that he was bringing over, and he swam across 5 times. The last time he was hit by some lumber that was in the water, and he was shaking, and they removed him to the hospital. They took him to Westerly Hospital, where he was overnight. My mother had no idea. He had moved my mom up to Ed Green's filling station in Dunn's Corners with her 2 daughters, baby, 6-month-old and an 18-month-old. And she found out later what had happened, that he had saved 5 people.
It's an amazing story.
And the press really followed him, went up to, called to him on a rooftop where he was back working as a carpenter, and they asked him, "Tell me about the story." And he said, "It had to be done. Go talk to the other fellows, the people that were on the ground with the rope and so forth." And so we grew up only hearing from my mom what my dad had done. And he was awarded the Carnegie Medal for courage, and the Westerly town, the Chamber of Commerce, awarded him the barometer, which I have here today. That barometer, he said, meant even more to him than the Carnegie Medal, because it was from his hometown folks.
Oh, nice.
So that's the story of the hurricane.
Well, it's quite a story, and it's been passed down through generations, so plenty to be proud of.
Thank you. And thankfully, my mother made a scrapbook, so we have all of that. And then many books were written later on about the hurricane.
Well, we'll take a look at that shortly. Okay, so we moved from Cove Road shortly thereafter up to Dunn's Corners. Mm-hmm. And tell us about the move and why you moved up there. My grandfather offered my father to buy the cottages that were, I think there were 12 original cottages, and my dad added on a motel through the years, and several more cottages. And every night after dinner, he'd take a little rest after working all day, and then he'd go up to the cottages and remodel through all of the winters. Every winter he'd be working on something. And so it became a very popular spot for families. A lot from Massachusetts and Connecticut, New Jersey, that loved the beach. Was it always the Pine Lodge?
It was. It just changed a little to Pine Lodge Motel, because motels became more popular as time went on.
Especially up and down the Route 1 corridor.
Yes, so people came to go to the beach, and it was every Saturday when people would move out. I actually made friends with so many people, first with children that they brought, and they kept coming back, and I'd almost want to hide on Saturday. I hated to say goodbye. I was always sentimental. So
sure, I can imagine. Bittersweet. You make all those friends and then have to lose them.
And I was blessed with people who took me home with them. I still can't believe that happened to me. Two particular families, a couple called John and Grace Heyman, and they had 2 children. When they were ready to leave, they talked to my parents, and I went to Springfield, Massachusetts with them for a week. Wow. And that particular couple came to our wedding, came to my husband's and my wedding, and the man was the longest survivor of the Coconut Grove fire in Boston, and he had plastic surgery. He was a very handsome, wonderful man, and lived his life as if he knew he had another chance at life. And I mean, he had remade ears, and you could see where they had taken skin, but he and his family were just joyful. And I kept in touch with him all of my life. He died at 99. He was the oldest living survivor, and his name was John Heyman. And so I went with one other family too, but that was a standout. They stayed friends forever.
Oh, where did you go to elementary school when you were in Dunscombe?
Elementary school was first kindergarten, Chestnut Street School, where the ambulance corps is. And then we went for 3 years, the Duns Corners kids, to Elm Street School. Okay. And then we were moved from 4th, 5th, and 6th to Bradford School, and made lots of good friends in Bradford, and then went to Babcock, and then to high school. Okay. And we were in the 10th grade, the Charahoe, they built their own school. So first, in our sophomore year, we were with Hope Valley, Charleston, and Richmond students. And then for our junior and senior year, our class got smaller. And truly, all of my life, I've missed those people from those outlying districts. They were good people, but wonderful for them that they got the Charahoe High School.
Yeah. I remember my dad saying that the football team got real small when all the boys from Charahoe started their own. So yeah, that's very interesting. And after school?
After school, I worked for an insurance office. First Frank Adamary, and then Checker, it was called, another insurance company. And then we were married. And
where'd you meet Ed?
Ed, I worked at after school, not in high school, a little job, summer job. Charlie's Restaurant in Duns Corners, across from Crossroads Restaurant in Duns Corners.
I don't remember Charlie's.
No?
No.
See how much older I am than you, Tom. Charlie's...
I remember the Westerly Furniture was across the street, and Dusty's, and the Blue Moon Tea Room.
And as you would head toward Westerly, after the furniture store, Charlie's was shortly thereafter. And that was run by Charles and Esther Green, a relative of Ed Green, who ran the filling station in Duns Corners. And they didn't have children, but they were like a kindly aunt and uncle to the people who worked there. And it was, Ed drove in one day and ordered coffee and a piece of blueberry pie. And it all started then.
Oh, Pete, that's something.
And so when my granddaughters were old enough to work someplace, I said, if you're ever in a restaurant and a man orders coffee and blueberry pie, take a second look.
How cute. That is great. I never knew that. I never knew about Charlie's.
Yeah, that's where we worked. In fact, there were nights that Charlie and Esther would close the place like 10:30 or so, and take us to the beach for a swim, like at 11 o'clock at night. We had a lot of fun with them.
And where was Ed from?
Ed was from Westerly.
Yeah.
He was on across town, Potter Hill Road.
Okay.
And he had...
That's a big trip from Potter Hill
Yes,
to Duns
it
Corners.
was.
No wonder why he was hungry.
That's right. And as a kid, I should say that life revolved around Duns Corners. The 4-H club was huge to us. We did demonstrations. We were taken to other granges to do demonstrations of cooking and such. We had a wonderful time, went to camp in the summer at URI, the 4-H club did. And then we also were in the choir, the children's choir at Duns Corners Church. And that church was held in right next to the fire station in the community house.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were able to have a building fund, and they built a church, and my dad and his construction company, Morris in Toronto, built the church.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
1960 was the first. We walked up from Ed, I was dating Ed then. We walked up from the community house to the new church.
Oh, wow.
And so that was quite a wonderful thing for the area.
Sure, and then oddly enough, the community center was moved to be part of the church.
That's right. Now it is the early learning center for the preschool, and I have grandchildren that go there.
That was a very busy building in Duns Corners. We had our Boy Scout meetings there. The fire department had their meetings there. And I didn't know it was a church as well.
Yes, yep. It housed the church from very early 50s, and before that, when the men were at war, my mother and several women started inviting ministers to come and speak, because war rationing, they could not drive to Westerly from Duns Corners, the gas rationing.
Really? Duns Corners today is extremely busy with Walmart and the bank and the service station and a huge fire station now. But back in the day, I remember it being a little more desolate, and you probably remember it far more desolate in your time. Can you tell us a little bit about the change?
Well, it was lovely to go just walk on the Old Post Road and cross over to Champlin's filling station. Next door to Champlin's filling station, to the right of it, was Henry Button's home, and my father had built that home years ago. Now it is gone, of course, but the Button house and the Champlin's filling station, and then when I was a kid, the Crossroads was there, and Charlie's was there, Westerly Furniture, Blue Moon Tea Room.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Blue Moon Tea Room? And then the community house, and then across was Ed Green's filling station. And then I'm trying to think. I remember John R. Ford being where Benny's is.
Yeah.
And of course, beyond that,
There was a restaurant across the street from that, too, in between where Spindrift Village is and the chiropractic center.
Ashworth's restaurant, yes. Ed and I think Ed's mother even worked there for a little while, helping Mrs. Ashworth. And Ed and I, when we were first married, went there once in a while to Ashworth's. And the building is there, but it's not.
It's going back, it was a restaurant, then a residential home, and now it's going to be another commercial building, I understand.
Right, yeah.
Okay. But no Spindrift Village. There was a antique store across the street, Krebs.
Oh,
for a
my
while.
sister Joyce actually worked, that was her first job. She worked for Krebs. And that was a mail order business. And the mail order business was eventually bought out because the Krebs passed away. And I actually did daycare for the people who bought the Krebs building. And that was...
But north of Krebs, there was nothing in Duns Corners at all.
We were safe. We could, and I did it often with my friend Lexi. We would walk all the way to the Charlestown line from Duns Corners just to do something different. And there was nothing really built up. Dredges and the Rodmans were a bit further down. There were ponds there, and we could skate in the winter. I skate in the wintertime, but no, the Havisham Inn, that's a little further down.
It was a Swiss chalet.
Swiss chalet, yep. The drive-in was there,
Okay.
further down.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to the drive-in. Okay, yeah, so there were a few things between there and the Charlestown line, but not much.
No. And you could safely cross the highway.
So pretty much was Dunn's Corners self-serving? Was everything there that you needed? Groceries and fuel and religion and restaurants?
There used to be a bus by Sammy Sacco, I don't know if you remember that came around, and it was like a grocery store. And my mother you just walked in the bus and you could buy your produce and your cereal. I don't know about meat, but that was very handy to my mother as she was working in the cottages and staying local. But otherwise, you had to go to town for your groceries.
And how'd you get into town? Was there a bus? No trolley into Dunn's Corners?
No trolley, and just my mom would drive there, and that would be it. Yeah. And Ed Green's filling station was a wonderful. Ed Green and the Champlin filling station both had ice cream for a nickel, and so that was a walk we could take and have fun. Yeah.
I remember the Greens having an annual carnival behind the filling station.
That was a highlight for the fire department to make money to support the fire department. And we all worked at it. We all loved the carnival coming in, and their hot dogs were the best hot dogs that I've ever eaten. And cotton candy, it was a great time. And that was my first date with Ed, to go to the carnival.
Oh, wow.
We went on the Ferris wheel.
How nice.
Yep, that's a good old memory.
Wow. And you and Ed have done extremely well. You've got a beautiful family that continues to grow. So tell me a little bit about the kids, grandkids, and now great-grandkids.
Yes. We have been very blessed to have, first we had 8 grandchildren, and then our son Dan and his wife became legal guardians for one more. For one of my daughter-in-law Rebecca's students, they became legal guardians for us. So that brought us to 9 grandchildren, and 3 boys and 6 girls, 6 granddaughters, 3 grandsons, and they have all been a blessing, and they're all grown up now. The oldest are 32, will be shortly, and the youngest is 22. And we are close, and we dearly love them, but beyond that are the great-grandchildren. And that has been a wonderful, I think it's renewed our spirits and a big joy, because when these little people walk in, or you hold them in your arms as a newborn baby, you are so grateful to be here, to have this joy in your life. And we just adore having a visit or seeing the kids. When on Saturday, one little guy drove over. He has a little car he can drive. He's 4. And he said, if I run out of gas, Grandpa, great-grandpa, I know you'll give me some. So we have a lot of toys around the house, and nothing means more to us than seeing them. And we have right now, we have 8 great-grandchildren. But in a couple of weeks, the 9th grandchild is due. And then in September, the 10th great-grandchild is due. And in November, Tom,
Yep.
you and I are going to be sharing grandchildren.
We
It'll
are.
be your first grandchild
My first granddaughter, yeah, and number 11 for you.
and number 11 for us. It is more than we could have imagined for wealth in our lives to have the family grow like this and to love them all and be close and not divided. we're very, very grateful.
Very, very fortunate, absolutely. But we didn't have anybody from Dunn's Corners, and I knew you would be important with your family being with the Pine Lodge and your dad working exclusively in Dunn's Corners for a long time, and then you and Ed spending your whole life in Dunn's Corners. I figured you would have been perfect, and you certainly have been. And then Ellen can fill in the gaps or even add a little bit to it.
I'm sure she'll add a lot to it. And one of the pictures I brought is of several friends my age, including Ellen, that served at a fireman's dinner in Dunn's Corners at the community house. So I have a picture of Ellen there.
Why don't we talk about that for just a little bit? So in Dunn's Corners, I know it's a small, tight community. Who do you recall as being friends, your childhood friends?
I have two that are still alive and are still my dearest friends. One was Sandy Petrello. Al and Eleanor were her parents, and they had 3 children. They had a son my age, Lee, and a son, Gary, who they call Cooper. We did everything together. The same with Lexi Shepherd, who lived on the Old Post Road with me. Lexi's parents were Pat and Joseph Morrow, Russell Morrow. And we, to this day, are still close friends. We stay in touch. I see Sandy Dinwiddie. She married Tom Dinwiddie from Dunn's Corners.
I know you're talking.
Yeah,
Sure.
I see Sandy every single week, and we go to church together too. So we have coffee and hug each other and try to support each other in many ways. And then Lexi Shepherd married and moved away, but several years ago, Ed sold them a house off of Cove Road, so they redid that, took that down and built another home, and so I spend a lot of time on the beach with Lexi in the summer. And Sandy, Lexi, and I as kids were church, the beach, Girl Scouts, and 4-H. And had a lot of good times together.
And you mentioned Ellen Madison being a friend growing up.
Ellen is a year younger than I am, and we saw each other. She had her friends and I had mine. It's funny how you go with the class you're in, but Ellen and I always knew each other, loved her mother and father, and her father was in the fire department, and Ellen would help serve those dinners when the firemen had their banquets. And so that's how I have a picture of Ellen.
Did they have those at the community center as
At
well?
the community center, yeah. There was Charlie Crandall and Doris Crandall. Their daughter, Cheryl, is one of the people. They grew up on Crandall Farm, but we all pitched in and helped with things like that going on.
Very nice. So, with your extended family and continuing growing family, what would Nancy say to them as your philosophy? What would you want to pass on to them as they go off with their lives?
I think any mother's prayer is that her children would stay close, that they would always get along, their family, and love each other, and that they would always have faith in God, because it's gotten of me all through my life, thanks to my parents, just bringing me up with a faith. I'm very grateful. And so I would say that, and to have fun and enjoy life, and I watch my grandchildren, my grown grandchildren, all have jobs. They all have professional jobs, and they help take care of each other's children. They're wonderful the way they work things out. So, yeah, love your nieces and nephews. I can't say enough about it, because now that both of my sisters have passed, and we were always very close, I am so grateful I have nieces and nephews that are reminders of my family, my original
beautiful.
Family.
That certainly is beautiful. So growing up, you had two sisters. You mentioned that were 6 and 8 years when you were born.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't close in age, but were you close as sisters go.
We were. And it started, this is what I've been told, that my dad was away, and my sister Joyce, who was 8 at the time, would say to my mother, "Mommy, don't worry, I'll take care of Nancy." And something happened there that I can't touch, but my heart knows that my sister Joyce was always watching out for me. And my sister Judy was 6 at the time, and we grew up very close, even though, I liked all their boyfriends as I got older. My sister Joyce sewed dolls' clothes for me, and every bit of my life we were in church together, and my sisters, I can't tell you how much they meant to me. Yeah, they were just wonderful people, and I'm grateful. When my mom passed away, my sisters and I made a pact that we would always celebrate our birthdays together, because my mother had been the focal point, because my mother lived a lot of years beyond my dad. My dad was just 65 when he died, and my mother died at 88. So that was a big gap, and my mother just taught us to love each other. She would have been hurt if we squabbled, so we never did.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I do remember Joyce at the school. You know, she's always so pleasant, greeting everybody in the morning, right as you walk in the door. And if you ever had to go to the principal's office, it wasn't so bad because Joyce was there too.
That's true. A lot of Duns Corners students have said that. And then my sister Judy lost her husband at a young age. My brother-in-law Tom Alger passed away from the asbestosis. And at the time they called it idiopathic fibrosis of the lungs. Electric Boat wasn't ready to say anything about that at the time. But Judy eventually remarried to Ed Crandall, a very nice man. He was from Westerly, but lived in Ashaway at the time. And so, just lucky to have a family that loved and cared for each other.
All the way around.
Always. Yeah.
Very blessed.
Our neighbors were Jess and Ginny Mello, and we always just got along. We know we had a dog that barked and barked, and it probably drove them crazy, but they were nice. They were kind. It's just amazing when you look back and think of it that, I think if our neighbor's dog, which are our children that live near us, we'd go a little crazy after it barked all the time, but they never complained about our dog, Railroad.
Railroad, that's cute.
He was a pretty big dog, like a railroad.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did Railroad get his name?
He was given to us. Beware when someone gives you a purebred black lab. We didn't have a lot of money, and so we were happy to have another lab. We had a dog named Jenny, a beautiful yellow lab, for years. And Jenny passed away, and then Railroad was given to us. And wow, he had the wanderlust. He wanted to visit the female dogs down in Indian Hills, and we were on the Old Post Road in Duns Corners. He actually plowed through the bottom of our screen door one day and disappeared. And so that's how Railroad was like a big train right through the neighborhood. He could escape from us. He was really something.
So we talked about Duns Corners being pretty self-sustaining, but every once in a while you had to go to the big city, had to drive into Westerly. Tell us a little bit about your trips into town and what you like most about Westerly, including Duns Corners and its other communities.
In the town of Westerly, I used to walk down from the high school, and I worked in McClellan's. It was kind of like a 5 and dime. Woolworths and McClellan's were both down there. And I would describe Westerly way back then as safe. Your hometown, there weren't fears like you feel in maybe a big city now. And everybody knew each other and seemed polite and happy, and it was a place to be proud of, especially our park and the library. We were so fortunate to have a beautiful park for so many years.
It still are.
Yes, right, we are. And I know people who don't have, say, a sledding path in the winter, bring their kids to the park, and yeah, it's a great place.